The Arc de Triomphe in Paris was commissioned in 1806 by Napoleon Bonaparte after his victory at Austerlitz. Its construction was inspired in the triumphal arches that the ancient Romans built throughout the empire. In ancient Rome, triumphal arches were symbols of victory and glory, and they were typically built along a processional route for the emperor to pass through after a victorious campaign. There are dozens of triumphal arches spread across the provinces of the Roman Empire, and although they can vary a lot depending on their geographical location and the time they were built, Roman triumphal arches follow a set of design principles that make them recognizable. They consist either of a single arch or of a central arch with a smaller one on each side. They always have semi-engaged columns to articulate the surface and to emphasize its proportions. They usually feature low-relief sculptures on the surface that commemorate a specific military campaign. The Arch of Titus in Rome, for example, erected to commemorate the capture of Jerusalem in the 1st century, has carvings depicting the emperor and the spoils from the Temple of Jerusalem. Roman triumphal arches also have a surmounting mass of stonework called Attic, with an inscription honoring the emperor to whom the arch was dedicated. In the Middle Ages, triumphal arches fell out of use, but they were revived in the early Renaissance by Leon Battista Alberti, an Italian architect who integrated them as a motif in his facades. And from there, other Renaissance architects began to use the form and rhythm of triumphal arches in various types of buildings. By the late 15th century, triumphal arches started to be built as royal gates to cities or palaces. And in the 17th century, Louis XIV, King of France, built a couple of arches to commemorate military victories. However, it was Napoleon Bonaparte in the early 19th century who truly popularized these structures by building several arches in Europe. In the 18th and 19th centuries, there was a reaction against the extravagance of Baroque and Rococo styles. Architects began to seek clarity, simplicity, and balance, qualities they believed were present in classical antiquity. The resulting style, known as Neoclassical Architecture, aimed to revive and imitate the principles of Greek and Roman architecture. Napoleon's arches were constructed during this neoclassical period, and they follow the design principles of neoclassical architecture. As a result, many Napoleonic arches closely resemble ancient Roman arches. For instance, the Arc de Triomphe du Carrousel looks almost exactly like the Arch of Constantine in Rome. However, the greatest and most famous of the Napoleonic arches, the Arc de Triomphe de l'Étoile, built to commemorate his most important victory, differs significantly from the arches built by Romans in antiquity. The architect in charge of the Arc de Triomphe, Jean-François Terrace Chalgrin, designed the largest triumphal arch ever built up to that point. And some of the features from classical Roman arches are missing in his design, such as the columns that articulate the surface, emphasizing the proportions of the arch. There were attempts by some architects against the A-styler design to make the arch more Roman-looking, such as this great model by Jean-Nicolas Hulot, who in 1811, after the death of Chalgrin, the original architect, proposed adding 4 Corinthian columns on each side, surmounted by an attic with dedicatory inscriptions. But the Minister of Interior decided to stick to the original design by Chalgrin, which was completed in 1836. The size of the Arc de Triomphe and its geometric simplicity, as well as the ancient-style sculpture program on the friezes, softened the severity of its A-styler design. The main sculptures are the ones decorating the exterior side of the piers of the arch, and they represent historic and allegorical scenes. Above them, the low-relief friezes depict battles won by the French army. On the left pier of the east side of the arch is the Triumph of 1810, sculpted by Jean-Pierre Cortot, which celebrates the victory of Napoleon at the Battle of Austerlitz. Napoleon is depicted as a Roman emperor being crowned by Victory, a Roman goddess. Above, The frieze represents the Battle of Aboukir, a town on the Mediterranean coast of Egypt, where Napoleon defeated the Ottoman army in 1799. On the right pier, there's La Marseillaise, the most famous of the four main sculptural groups. Sculpted by François Rude, represents the uprising of 1792 that ended the monarchy of Louis XVI. The volunteers marched to defend France, led by a central figure of the winged goddess of liberty. The frieze above depicts the funeral of François Marceau, a general of the French Revolution. On the west side of the arch, the sculptural group of the right pier represents the resistance of 1814 during the Allied army's invasions. Soldiers and citizens bravely defend France. And above, a frieze depicting the Battle of Arcole in Italy, where Napoleon's troops cross a bridge to defeat the Austrian army in 1796. And on the left pier, the Peace of 1815 symbolizes the return of the peace to France after the Napoleonic Wars. Figures depict children studying, farmers plowing the land, the soldier has sheathed his sword, and laurels of victory grow around Minerva, the Roman goddess of war. These last two scenes were sculpted by Antoine Etel. And above it, the frieze that depicts the capture of Alexandria in 1798, the general wounded in the head, points towards the enemy. The central arches on both sides are decorated with winged victories, symbolizing triumph. On the north and south facades, you'll see a smaller arch and a main frieze. The frieze on the south side depicts the Battle of Jemappes in 1792, part of the Revolutionary Wars. And the frieze on the north side depicts the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805, with Napoleon on horseback at the center. This is probably the most important victory of Napoleon, as it's considered his tactical masterpiece. He commissioned the construction of the Arc de Triomphe after his return from the battle. The continuous frieze that surrounds the entire arch at the attic shows on one side the French armies departing for war, with the great military figures walking next to the altar of the homeland. And on the opposite side, French soldiers returning to France after victory, bringing with them spoils of war. On the right, the army returning from Italy brings the statue of the Tiber from Rome. And on the left, the army returning from Egypt brings the Sphinx of Tanis, now at the Louvre Museum. And in the same chariot, the obelisk of Luxor, now at the center of the Place de la Concorde. Above the continuous frieze, at the top of the arch, there are 30 sculpted shields surrounding the arch, each engraved with the locations of major battles won by the French army. Under the main arch, you'll find the names of 96 battles inscribed on both sides. And under the smaller arches, you'll find 660 names of French generals. Those underlined are the generals who died on the battlefield. And there's the name of 32 battles on the top of the outer side of these arches. And above the names, there are 4 reliefs more. They depict victory holding a tablet listing the most important battles of the Napoleonic Wars. The bronze inscriptions on the pavement commemorate more recent events, such as the proclamation of the Republic and the World Wars. And also the famous Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which represents all soldiers who have died for France throughout history, and an eternal flame that never extinguishes. You can go inside the Arc de Triomphe and climb up a set of spiral stairs to reach a mezzanine floor, where you can observe the internal structure of stone vaults that conform the arch. After another set of stairs, you get to the attic room, where dedicatory inscriptions adorn the walls, and a great model of the building is displayed. And after a final staircase, after climbing a total of 284 steps, you reach the Terrace of the Arch, where you get an amazing panoramic view of the beautiful boulevards that surround the Place de l'Étoile, the roundabout where the arch is located. The city of Paris, where buildings reach a maximum height of 37 meters, looks beautifully proportioned when viewed from the top of the 50-meter tall Arc de Triomphe. To the east, you can see the obelisk at the Place de la Concorde and the Louvre at the end of the axis. And beyond, you can even see Notre Dame Cathedral and the spire of the Sainte-Chapelle. To the left, you can appreciate the roof of La Madeleine, and to the right, the dome of the Pantheon in the distance. To the north, you can see the Sacré-Cœur Basilica at Montmartre, and to the south, the delicate Eiffel Tower, looking like an object that was gently placed on the city. Left of the Eiffel Tower, you can also see the golden dome of Les Invalides, and in the background, the Montparnasse Tower. Notice the 12 radiating tree-lined boulevards organized by Napoleon III and his prefect, Baron Haussmann. And at the end of the Champs-Élysées, the modern financial area of Paris, La Défense, where a modern arch was built to frame the end of the Champs-Élysées axis. The construction of the Arc de Triomphe was finished over a decade after Napoleon's death, but in 1810, when he entered Paris from the west with his new bride, Archduchess Marie-Louise of Austria, he had a full-scale wooden model of the completed arch constructed, so they could walk through it. In 1840, brought back to France from St. Helena, Napoleon's remains passed under the completed arch on their way to his final resting place at Les Invalides.
It's so impressive how much influence the Romans had in the French monarchy, especially during this period, that they considered themselves as the legitimate descendants of the Roman Empire. And you can see that in their architecture and sculpture, still replicating Roman forms, as well as their symbols of power and religion. The French are Christians, but their churches look like Roman temples. Their monarchs dressed as Roman emperors. And they celebrated their victories with Roman Triumphal Arches. The Roman Triumphal Arch was so influential, and is such an important motif for architects, that you see it everywhere. But dominating the western vista of the Place de la Concorde and the avenue of Champs-Élysées, the Arc de Triomphe epitomizes the golden age of urban planning, contributing to Paris's status as one of the most significant urban achievements in history.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more of Paris. Goodbye.